I really wish that this were not a true story, but I had the unfortunate luck of living out my very own urban legend. Before this night a couple of years ago, I really used to believe that houses were where frightening things happened. With all those unseen rooms and corridors, basements and attics, surely an apartment is always safe. At the time, I was living in a unit on the 16th story of a building in downtown Toronto. As a horror movie freak, I rationalized all the strange creaks and rattles I had heard through the ceilings and walls as my noisy neighbors or the plumbing, and slept soundly every night. One night, my boyfriend was away on business and I had stayed up late watching TV. I grew drowsy around 2 a.m. and made my way to the bed, turning off the lights as I went. At some point during the night, I woke up. I don't know exactly what time it was, but I couldn't have been sleeping for more than an hour. At first I wasn't sure what it was that had woke me up, but then I heard it. A knocking at the front door. Still drowsy and a bit fearful as I was alone, I stayed in bed and waited. There it was again. My bedroom was at the furthest end of the apartment, as far from the front door as could be, but there was no mistaking that there was someone there. Awake now, my first thought was that I should go see who it was, but something, my instincts, kept me in bed and silent. The knocking came again, more frantic now. I said to myself that I was being cowardly, that it could be a neighbor who needed help. But as I had these thoughts, the frantic knocking turned into an almighty pounding. It was at this point that I gave up on entertaining the idea of going to the door. Whoever was out there could try calling on someone else. I was alone and female and way too worked up to be of much assistance to anyone. I stayed still and silent and prayed that my visitor would just give up and leave. The pounding continued for what seemed like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. Intermittently, the sound changed back to the polite tapping and then again picked up to the point where I truly believed that whatever was out there was going to try to break in. I wanted to grab my phone and call someone, but who? The police? I was sure at this point that what was happening in my hallway was a very determined person hell-bent on getting what they needed from me. But in the blackness of night, I didn't feel like I had a solid grasp on my wits. I wasn't even positive that what was happening was real. It was so terrifyingly strange. I was afraid that any noise I made would confirm to the freak that someone was home and I was not willing to take the risk. All I could do was lie as still as I could in my dark bedroom, crying silently and praying. Why were my neighbors not coming to see what the commotion was about? Why was no one helping me? Why was this happening? What did it want? Then it stopped. It lay there shaking, every sense straining. Nothing. It was gone. Oh my God. It's given up. It's left. Thank you. Outside the front door there was a sharp scratching sound like someone was raking their fingernails across the wood, over and over. I'm not sure if I passed out, but suddenly it was morning. The sounds had ceased. Everything looked different bathed in light. The noises seemed so bizarre, so far away that I couldn't feel sure that anything had happened at all, and I roused myself from my bed, feeling braver than the night before. I tiptoed into my hallway and started towards the front door, feeling my heart pounding heavily the closer I drew. As I reached the front door of my apartment, there was a sharp rap on the door. I must have yelped or screamed or something because someone called out to me.
"It's okay. It's the police. Open up."
The police? Jeez. I looked through the peephole to be sure and undid the lock. On opening the door, I was faced with a somber-looking officer. Past him into the hallway, I could see more cops milling around. The policeman explained to me that someone had snuck into my building during the night. Security camera footage showed them prowling around random floors, knocking on doors and walking away. As the officer spoke, I noticed most of the policemen were walking in and out of my next-door neighbor's unit, accompanied by paramedics. At around 4 a.m. that morning, my neighbor had been killed. A boy, a little younger than me, had evidently opened his door and a stranger had forced his way in. Someone a couple floors up eventually called the police an hour or so later after receiving some threatening knocks on their own door. I heard that the maniac was arrested in the hall of another floor, carrying a hunting knife, duct tape, and a Ziploc bag filled with the boy's tongue, eyes, and ears. Apparently the killer was a schizophrenic who had tried to eat the contents of the bag as the police closed in on him. I was hyperventilating as the officer related the facts and managed to stutter that the knocking had been on my door as well. The cop nodded and asked me to step into the hall as they needed to examine my front door. It was then that I turned and saw that letters had been carved into my door, spelling the words, "First Choice."